Morning, guys. Good to see you. So we're working through Colossians. Obviously, did chapter 1 last week, sort of an overview, and that's sort of how we're flying through it. Trying to do Colossians in 4 weeks is a bit quick, but we're into chapter 2. Go and give it a read. This is the section where basically Paul speaks against what's going on in Colossae and the things that some people are coming in. This is a relatively new church, and there's people coming in giving all different kinds of views on how they should live as Christians, and they're wrong views, and they're not views of Jesus. So Paul comes in chapter 2 and basically dispels all these myths. And then chapter 3 tells the people how they should live. And then chapter 4 is just like final greetings and a few final things he wants to let them know. So go and give it a read. You'll see straight at the start of chapter 2, he mentions Laodicea. Now, Laodicea is a town that's not very far from Colossae. And there was also a church there. And you can read in Revelation that actually the church in Laodicea was essentially a lukewarm church. They weren't really up for God. They were just sort of plodding along, and it's referenced in Revelation that they were lukewarm. And this letter is written to the church in Colossae, but the fact there's a mention of Laodicea seems to suggest that maybe Paul would expect this letter to be taken to the church in Laodicea as well, for them to read it and get stuff from it. And he doesn't want them to be lukewarm. And for me, those of you who know me, I have a real heart for God's church, and that is the whole of God's church, regardless of what buildings the church is in. And I'm heavily involved with churches together in our town, and I'm part of a charity that is churches working together. And Paul is here, but basically saying, the way I see it, that actually churches should be working together, and I have a real heart for churches working together. I love the fact that at Embrace, out of 5 or 6 churches in our town, you've got youth groups. There's only a couple of churches that aren't involved in what we do together, and it's great that we work together. I think that's brilliant. Anyhow, let's get back into it. So verse 4 and that section onwards, I keep looking down to my Bible to make sure I'm in the right bit. Verse 4 he talks through there's basically these Gnostics. And Gnosticism is what it is, and it's a fancy word, but it's basically people who are all about knowledge, and they're coming in saying basically knowledge is only for a few people. Only a few special people truly have the knowledge of God. And Paul comes in and basically goes, shut up. We get all the knowledge that we need through Jesus. It isn't that special people have the knowledge. The knowledge is there for all, for everyone. They talk about the body being evil, a sinful body. And Paul comes along and just says, well, actually, God is in our body. So it can't be that evil because God is in it as his Holy Spirit. We are filled with his Holy Spirit. If you've been following us through with Grid, you'll know that over the past few weeks. So Paul counters that argument. And then there's this other argument that Christ wasn't fully human. And Paul counters that by basically saying, well, yeah, Christ was fully human, but he was also God at the same time. He's both in one. Then we get to verse 7, talking about being rooted. You'll see as you read verse 7, let me find it in my Bible, rooted and built up in him. And it's that sense of being rooted in Jesus and how a plant is rooted. And a plant makes its energy through its leaves with photosynthesis. I get that. But he's making the point, I'm sure these guys didn't fully get that at that point, that these roots are going down and are bringing up the moisture, bringing up what that plant needs. It's rooted in the ground. You take a plant out of the ground, it soon withers and dies. But we need to be rooted in Jesus and not surviving on what's around us. And he's making that point, though, as Christians in this church, and as we should do, our focus should be on Jesus, not on Jesus' word, and for me, on the Bible. That's where our focus should be, not on what people say around us. And I love going on YouTube, and that's how I learn stuff. I listen to different people on YouTube, and I know certain people to listen to. And then I listen to some other people, and it's a case of going, oh, is that really rooted in the Bible? Let me check this. And sometimes it's not. So I ignore that. So about being rooted. I've now lost my notes. My computer's playing up. There we go. Then verse 8, classic here, which I didn't get until I read, shed loads around it, used the phrase takes captive. Now the word takes captive, that phrase in ancient Greek is similar to the phrase that is used for the word synagogue. So take captive and synagogue sound similar. So Paul is doing a bit of a play on words here. He basically says, where are we? Verse 8. See that no one else takes you captive through hollow and deceptive philosophy. And it specifically makes sure that, takes you captive, but also synagogue. And then he goes on to say deceptive philosophy. He's saying basically don't go to the synagogue. There were Jews at this point who were saying, you new Christians, that's fine. But you need to still come to the synagogue. You need to still follow the law of Moses. And Paul is going, no, you don't. And it's a sort of a play on word there that takes captive in synagogue. And as people in Colossae reading that would have gone, that's quite funny, a play on words. So I thought that was interesting. Then verse 7 talks about circumcision. And obviously being circumcised is a sign that for Jewish men is a sign that they are Jewish. Okay, when they're circumcised as a young child, a baby, it's a sign that they are part of that family. They are Jewish. They are religious Jews. If you're circumcised, you're Jewish. It's a sign of being with God. And there were people saying, "Oh, you new Christian believers, you need to be circumcised." And Paul's coming back, going, "No. The sign that you are with Jesus, that you are part of God's family, is that you've decided to follow Jesus. That's it. There doesn't need to be a circumcision, actual physical evidence of this. And of course, there would be in the way that they act and talk and speak. There would be that outward opening, being a Christian. But you choose to be with God by choosing to follow him, not by being circumcised. And then verse 13 to 17 is talking about festivals and things to eat. And there were all these festivals that they would have. And Paul's going, you don't need to be part of these festivals. They're not of God. You don't need to just eat this thing or eat that thing, or they're all gone. These people who might be saying this are wrong. There's freedom, complete freedom in Jesus here. You don't need to eat these things. Jesus is the one true God. You don't need to go to these moon festivals where they're worshipping other gods. They're gone. Those gods are gone. We have now got Jesus. You don't need to be part of this. Verse 18 talks about angel worship. There were people at this time who were saying to get to God, you had to worship angels. And Paul's going, no, you don't need to do that. And verse 20 onwards just talks about all these different rules that there are. You can't taste, you can't handle this, you can't touch this, you can't do that. And Paul is making the argument that these are man-made rules. These aren't rules of Jesus. These are man-made things. And stepping back and looking in at chapter 2, this is pertinent for us today. There are lots of things that go on where the world is calling us in to say, oh, we need to follow this, you need to do that. And it's like, well, if it's not of Jesus, we don't need to. And I've heard people say, oh, you need to do this, this, and this to be a proper Christian. You're not a proper Christian unless you do this, this, and this. And that's wrong. And those people are wrong for saying that. But also, should we be taking part in other festivals that are not of Jesus? I mean, for me personally, you guys probably all know, I have a real issue with Halloween and with churches celebrating Halloween. It makes it really clear that we shouldn't be part of it. I know some churches celebrate Halloween by dressing it up as a light party, but we're still recognising those festivals, that festival. And at Bournemouth, if it's All Hallows Eve, if we're celebrating the day before All Saints Day, great, but we don't celebrate any other real ones. We have Christmas, which we've stolen, and Easter, that equally, we've taken those at times during pagan festivals. There's a grey area, and I don't know, but why do we do stuff in church? Do we do stuff because it's in the Bible? Or do we do stuff because man has said we should do certain things? And I suppose it's actually where our heart is. Is our heart for Jesus? Or is our heart doing these things to keep those around us happy? And I think probably at this time, there were people in Colossae who were Christians who felt they had to do certain things. They had to take part in these festivals because the other people in the community would go, oh, them Christians aren't taking part in this festival. This bad thing happens, or it's the Christians' fault. We'll blame them because they've not worshipped this God or what have you. And Paul's saying, actually, no, you're not to do that. And I look at myself and my walk with Christ and go, are there things in my life that are maybe man-made that I beat myself up over if I do them, and what have you. Anyhow, I'm rabbiting on. I'll shut up. Next week, chapter 3. So give it a read between now and next week, Colossians chapter 3. Have a look through it. There's a guy called N.T. Wright on YouTube. Give him a search. He talks about it. Talks about Colossians really well. I really enjoyed watching what he says. So see you guys next week. Keep well, stay safe. See you later.